Welcome to the Drive Able podcast, where each episode you get to listen to two of Australia's leading professionals in the area of driving and community mobility for people with disabilities. In each episode, they interview drivers, carers, and industry experts and share the insider's guide to driving with a disability. Here are your hosts, Brad and Ollie.
Welcome to the Drivable Podcast. I'm Elliot Barrion here, and over there is Brad Williams. Today we are talking about becoming a driver trainer OT and everything around that with Beth Cheal from the Institute of Driver Health. Institute of Driver Health is one of the leading training organizations for upskilling OTs to become driver OTs, and they're also one of the country's leading driver OT clinics providing OT service as well. So this one's going to be really, really exciting. Brad, are you ready for another great episode?
Yeah, I met Beth when I was first doing my driver training. So she's been around for a while. She was involved in training me way back in 2008. So she's got a heap of experience and a lot of knowledge. And I can't wait to get her on board and start this conversation. Hi, everyone. I'm really excited to get into today's interview. But before we get started, just a real quick shout out to our sponsors who make this show possible, Mobility Engineering and Williams OT. This show takes a lot of time and money to put together, and we're forever grateful for their passion for our industry. Okay, enough with that. Let's get into the interview. Today we have Beth, who's one of the founders and head educators at the Institute of Driver Health. G'day, Beth. Thanks very much for joining us.
Thanks for inviting me. I love coming and talking to you guys. Thank you.
We're going to ask you the same question we ask everybody, and that's to introduce yourself and a little bit of a background and how you've got to where you are today.
Well, I'm an occupational therapist. I trained a long time ago, so I might not admit how long ago, but I trained as an occupational therapy driving assessor in 1999. And I've been working pretty much exclusively in that area since then. So yeah, that's my specialty for most of my career. And I got a job at Sydney University working in a driver assessment and rehab clinic in 2004. So that's when I started being involved in training the trainers. So training occupational therapists to become OT driving assessors, and training driving instructors to become rehab qualified and other health professionals. And then that continued for many years. And in about 2018, we carried on that training through Institute of Driver Health. So Institute of Driver Health is a business that I've set up with my partner, Dr. Joan O'Donnell. And so together we run this business, and it's been a really great journey. My business partner, yeah.
Yeah, like I just said before we came on air with yourself in our little introduction that I met you way back in 2008 when I became driver trained. So you've got a bunch more experience than me if you've been doing it since 99. I'm sure you've got some wonderful stories to share over that time, but can you think of a one-off highlight or one or two highlights that have been your big, they stick in your memory type of thing?
Ooh, well, as an occupational therapy driving assessor, you certainly get to see all different kinds of people driving with lots of significant disabilities. So I think everyone's got lots of memorable ones, people driving with significant cognitive impairment where there's been some near misses and it's a bit hair raising. So I'm sure I could pull a few of those ones out, but just thinking on the hop, gosh, I don't know.
I'll put you under the pump.
If it comes up, bring us back to it if it comes back. The story comes up. What can you tell us a bit more about the company, Institute of Driver Health? Like, what do you guys do?
Yeah. Oh, well, so Institute of Driver Health has three arms. We have a research arm. So that's where Joan and I we've both got our PhDs. Joan is in more, in terms of aneurysms, repair of aneurysms. She did her research around driving and, oh gosh, sorry, Joan, driving after brain surgery to coil aneurysms. So that's her background, and mine was in how to assess cognitive fitness to drive for people with cognitive impairment, and how can you assess someone in the office to see if they're going to be fit to drive without taking them out in a car. So, which is tricky, of course. So that was my PhD. And so we've continued to publish in this area. We've got a couple of papers, both of us just recently accepted, and we are involved in different research projects. Like at the moment, we're involved in a project with the George Institute, training older drivers in how to manage high-level technology in their vehicles. And then there is, we have clinical services. So we've got some wonderful clinical staff who do our day-to-day driving assessments. For people who
that's
just
like just the standard kind of NDIS stuff.
Fitness to drive assessments and NDIS assessments and so
How
on.
many OTs do you have there?
So we have Lyndall Bainbridge and Laura Boskai. So they are both our clinical OTs, and we've got Heidi. We're setting up a new clinic in Taree that, well, actually down the coast a little bit from there, but that's Foster. We're going to set one up at Foster, and it's Hayley that's running that. So 3 clinical OTs, and then Lyndall is also our education services manager. So Laura is our clinical services manager as well. So that's our clinical arm, and the education arm is running courses for health professionals. So we do courses for optometrists, for doctors, for occupational therapists who want to become driving assessors, or who just want to gain knowledge in this area, different short courses as well. And for driving instructors. So quite a big suite of courses we offer.
Oh, yeah, cool.
Yeah, well, it's fascinating, the courses that you do offer. And, I've just updated some skills with our team at our office with some, keeping the education and the professional development up and getting the best that we possibly can for our clients. Your the research that's fascinating, but we're going to ask more questions today about the training side of it all, because we want to ask for the people that might be listening into this, the OTs especially, but also some of the support coordinators and some of the clients. What actually makes a driver trained OT? So what training do they have to go through? And what are some of the things that they might have had to have done prior to doing the course?
Mm-hmm. So to work as an occupational therapy driving assessor, you do need to do some additional training, because obviously it's a very high stakes area. So the advice that occupational therapists are giving in this area could affect safety of the participant driving and also the community. So you definitely don't want to get this wrong, and you're working within legal frameworks of licensing authorities and legislation. So you really do need that additional training to become a certified occupational therapy driving assessor. So there's 3 courses in Australia that do this. Ours is just one of them. And so it's very important not to be making recommendations about return to driving and vehicle modifications if you don't have that extra layer of training, just because of the safety implications. So it's an advanced area of practice.
So you just have one course that covers the whole thing of becoming an OT?
We have one course that is the certification for occupational therapy driving assessors, but we do have short courses that are just information kind of courses for, like, for example, in heavy commercial vehicle assessment and training, and that sort of thing.
Yeah, okay. So that certified course, is it like, when you said there was 3, are they all certified, and is there like some kind of so for someone who's looking to get into that, is there something they need to look out for, like some kind of certification, so they don't accidentally get it?
It has to be an Occupational Therapy Australia recognised course.
Yeah. Okay, OTA. Yeah, okay.
Yeah. So for people that may be looking into this, Beth, if we're talking about the your Driver Institute of Health, but we're also point out there that UniSA in South Australia are running a course, La Trobe are running a course, and there's another one in Sydney, I think, isn't there?
La Trobe no longer runs the course.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so the course is run by Caroline Unsworth.
Yeah.
I'm not quite sure which university it's through
at the moment, but yeah, so you might want to look at what's available in your local area and closest to you if you're thinking about doing this. Beth, are there some requirements for an occupational therapist prior to going into the course?
Yeah, we recommend a minimum of 2 years clinical practice. So it's probably not a really good job role for a new graduate, just because it is an advanced area of practice. So you need some prerequisite skills. So some work skills, people skills, because a fair bit of conflict in this area. Sometimes you're withdrawing people's capacity to drive, which can be a bit fraught. And also just some good base clinical skills like in range of movement and strength testing, cognitive screening, and so on. Apart from that, as long as you're a qualified occupational therapist, then yeah, we need occupational therapists from all domains in this area, mental health, but it is probably suits the skill set of a physical OT as well, particularly.
What about any kind of experience as a driver OT before you actually can sign off on stuff? Is there any requirement for that, or is there any recommendations around that?
Only that you do that postgraduate course, which is generally around 2 to 3 weeks. So yeah, you need to get that certification, and then you can start making recommendations for things around vehicles.
And if I'm like I guess an OT that's been, relatively new, I guess, as you said, a couple of years down the track, and maybe wanting to dig further into my career, what is the benefit of being a driver OT? Is there like is it a passion? Is it better pay, better clients, more like what is the attraction for someone?
I love the area. I guess you've got to like driving. It's a very concrete area of practice, which is what I like about it. It's sort of, you just doing functional assessment and basically troubleshooting for people and solving problems. So if someone's lost their right leg, they can no longer use that right leg on the brake and accelerator. Okay, what will we do? They've still got an intact left leg, so let's put an accelerator on the left and teach them to drive with their left leg on the brake and the accelerator. Or they're unable to use both of their lower limbs, maybe due to complete spinal cord injury. Well, let's move the gas and the brake up to the upper limbs and work on that, so it's pretty concrete. You feel like you're really helping people, and you've got a kit of tools that, they can really solve people's issues in this area, get them back into really important life roles, like, take the children to school, to work, to, go to lots of social activities. And a lot of people comment that when they get back to driving, they feel like, oh, okay, now I've got my life back. So,
well, you just I just had a penny drop moment thanks to you, because you just explained to me how my mind works, and now I know why I love doing mobility engineering so much. And doing those driving products, because what you just said is typically how I work is if this doesn't work, let's look at solving that problem, like, X plus this equals that, type thing. And I guess that's a big point to point out, because if you're aware that you process things in that manner, then this is a good field to get into, I'm hearing. And as you said, like we're all of us here are passions for keeping community safe and through the roads. So that's also a big part of it as well, having that passion for driving and transport, I'm hearing.
Yeah. And a lot of clients tell us that when they get back to driving, they just feel like they're just a typical member of the community. There's no disability on the road. No one can see their wheelchair or limitations. They just drive along, pay their toll like everyone else, get from A to B. A lot of people with a disability just love to drive, and it's an extremely rewarding area to work in.
Yeah. That's another common theme that we've had actually on this podcast, where you the idea that people often can't even see in the car, so they can just see the non-disabled part, for lack of a better term, like so that's a big kind of attraction to people. So and as you said, it's very rewarding. So it's really cool.
I just want to add something into what you're saying, Beth. As a driver trained OT, I don't want to jump in and steal any thunder or anything else like that, but there's a mindset, a model that we work around as OTs, called the PEO model, which is person, environment, and the actual occupation. So what is the actual task that you're doing? And we get taught to assess the person, assess the environment, and then assess the task that they're actually doing, and figure out whether there's issues in any of those areas. And what's so good about driving for me is that the driving assessment fits smack bang into that model. We assess the physical abilities of the person, or the cognitive abilities of the person, or the vision side of the person, and then we look at the actual task of driving. How do you control the steering wheel and try to match that up? How do you control the pedals and try and match that up? How you get in and out of the car, try and match that up. And then we also look at, where do you drive? What's involved in actually driving? Because it's not just getting in and out of the car and making the steering wheel spin around and making the pedals go up and down. It's actually, what type of environment are you actually driving in? Is it going to church on a Sunday in a small country town, or is it going to and from work every day and starting your life journey as a 16-year-old, and you've got 60 years worth of driving in front of you? There's completely different roles in the driving world. Beth, did you want to expand on that, or
Oh, that's a really good description. Yeah, I think that's why I love it too, because you're just looking at someone's whole of life, and we get such variety of clients. With all different challenges, from someone who's living with short stature, to someone who's living with high-level spinal cord injury, to someone living with traumatic brain injury. And I'm just helping people to identify their goals, and in terms of community access, and hopefully just get back to driving if they're going to be a candidate for driving and that's safe and legal, or enabling them to at least be a passenger in a vehicle and travel safely, which is a lot of what Ali does, making sure people are secured safely in vehicles, in wheelchairs. And
so if someone is what I'm hearing actually kind of a lot of interesting things for me on a personal level as well, but with this POE model, so let's say if I'm an OT again that's sort of coming up and done a few years and looking to expand my career, what I'm hearing is that, to give a context first, is often I find in our world, and it might be the same in yours, that people tend to think vehicles are very complicated, and they can be very overwhelming. And a lot of people go, oh, vehicles, that's the really hard stuff. They're so complicated. We get that on the engineering. And I have heard that sometimes in the OT space. I don't know if it's that common. But I guess what I'm hearing is actually sounds like it might actually align well with OT training. And a lot of OTs might be able to get into it a lot easier than what they might actually think. What do you think?
Do you feel like they need to have a passion for cars, Beth?
Not necessarily. No. I mean, you have to like driving and not get very car sick, I suppose, because you're in cars and trucks a lot.
That gets better over time. Just saying.
That's right. At the end of the day, for occupational therapists, it's just a functional assessment, really, in a car. I mean, of course, you need to do that extra training because there's all the legal and safety implications. But it's just like doing a kitchen assessment. You're looking at someone's component performance, someone's functional performance, the context of the task, exactly like we were just saying before, person environment performance. So
you don't have to be a chef to do a kitchen assessment, as
an
example.
Right.
Yeah, you don't have to have a passion for cooking. You're looking at someone's ability to be able to undertake a task, and then breaking that down with the OT training that you've got. And what Beth does with her course is teaches you how to take your mindset of being an OT and direct that into the task of driving, which is, I get a lot of questions because, when we're hiring staff, am I pigeonholing myself? Is it restricted with the type of work that you're doing? Did you want to touch on that at all, Beth, for OTs that might be contemplating it?
Our business chooses just to work with the role of a driver and with passengers, but there's no reason why you can't practice across all different domains. Like, you can still do wheelchair prescription, home modifications, driving. It just adds another string to your bow, and maybe even adds a whole new career as an OT. I think Brad and I, we've specialized in driving and love it, and our whole businesses are pretty much around that, but you don't have to do it that way.
Yeah.
The other thing that I wanted to take on top of that was you don't have to, I just want to add it back in, that you don't have to have a passion for cars. You will learn about different accelerators the same as you'll learn about different rocker knives. or kettle tippers, and you'll learn about different steering aids the same way as you'll about different cutlery and things like that. I'm just using kitchen assessments as an example because that's what we're trained as on really early in our OT careers, especially if you're in the rehab field. But it's the same for mental health, or it's the same for other areas. You're analyzing a task and adding to it. But the variety of clients that need driving assessments is significant. So yesterday I was doing a dementia assessment, and the day before I was looking at wheelchair access. That was last week, wheelchair access for somebody that has very restricted limbs, and looking at high level controls where they won't even touch the steering wheel and they won't even touch any pedals. And it's all going to be done by remote electronic high level controls, and they're sitting back from all of the standard controls of a car. So there's a massive variety in this work.
Is there a need, is there a shortage for this specialty? Should people be flocking to you and going out and getting the work? Because I guess I hear it anecdotally that there's not enough driver OTs, but is actually that the case?
It's definitely the case. Of course, it depends where you're based, but even in the major capital cities, there's still a shortage of occupational therapy driving assessors, and most definitely in rural and regional areas, there can be long waiting lists. Even in Sydney, there's waiting lists at some of the hospitals that are 6 and 12 months. So we badly need occupational therapy driving assessors trained.
If you're a regional OT, actually, I mean, I'm not an OT, so I won't push it too hard, but it'd be interesting to see what you guys think about that. I would say it's kind of should be a given because you're going to be doing a lot more variety of stuff for a smaller community. So you kind of need to have all of those bows.
Yes. Yeah, so a lot of the rural and regional areas are just crying out for occupational therapy driving assessors. They have to travel a long way to find one, and it's like Dubbo, Orange, and
I traveled 3 hours. I traveled 3 hours yesterday for an assessment. So traveling out to the client because there's just no option in their area. So I 100% back that up.
Yeah.
Are you able to do the training remotely, or do you have to come physically?
So we did put the training remotely. We put the training online at the beginning of COVID. It was just a COVID response. Like everyone else, we had to think about how to transition our business to cope with the pandemic. And I think, all of us had to do that. So we had a course booked with 18 people ready to come to us and only a few weeks to respond. And ours was the only course in Australia that was still 2 weeks face-to-face. So we quickly had to pivot to online training, not letting excellent be the enemy of good. And of course, face-to-face training is ideal, but the choice for all the training organisations is, do we just stop training for the next, going on 3 years now? Universities had the same question, and so universities transitioned to 100% online training. Both of my children have done 2 years of their health science degree 100% online, including pracs and so on. So it's not the best, but otherwise do you just not do anything for a few years? So we put it online, but it had a lot of equity benefits for that period, because people from rural and regional areas, OTs, were saying to us, we're just so grateful that we were able to do this course. We couldn't afford to come to.
Well, that's why I wanted to point that out, because if it is available, I guess that's a big encouragement for people from those regional areas to reach out and do that, because as I said, it's something that I've experienced because I've done a lot of work and try and push the kind of all of this stuff out in the regional areas, because there is a huge shortage. And I guess if you're an OT, it's more business, so that's one angle to it. It's a bit more potential, as you said, another avenue to your career and more income. But particularly, and I know a lot of the regional people don't think that way, rural people, it's more about being able to holistically serve the community, And I guess I would encourage people to really look at that, particularly if it is available online, because they don't have to lose, days of work and accommodation and all that kind of stuff. They can just do it online and start helping their community.
Well, fortunately, the international borders have opened recently, and most of the state borders and things are easing. So we'll review, have to review that going forward. But yeah, it's been wonderful just to hear the stories from people in very remote areas just saying, yeah, I couldn't afford to have done this course because it would have been 2 weeks of accommodation in Sydney and the cost of the course and so on. So yeah, it's been really great to see that those sorts of people have had opportunity to do the training.
So it takes 2 full weeks. Is it full time?
So no, now we do, the model we do is a blended model. So we've got 4 days online and 5 days face-to-face. Yeah, so it's about 10 days all up.
And then once you do that, just to clarify again, then you can basically get straight into it, or do you have to do some other things?
As long as you meet the competency standards and the course competencies is signed off on all the skills and you hand in your assignments and pass those. And then so as long as you meet the course requirements, then that takes most people about 2 weeks after the end of the course to finish. So let's say the process takes about 5 or 6 weeks, depending on how quickly you do the assignments and so on.
Do you think there is, sorry.
I was going to say the course itself is 2 to 3, or let's say 3 weeks now with the online model. Yeah.
Do you think, I mean, I'm hearing that there's maybe not a requirement, but would you recommend some form of having someone over your shoulder for a certain period of time? And what would you, do you have any kind of standardized recommendation around that?
Yes, it's much better for the people who come and do the training who are going back to established clinics like Brad Scott, so that because they can get that one-on-one good support with people after the course, because you can only pick up so much. It's a very intense course. There's so much content. It's quite complex. So yeah, and you're also sometimes not at the stage when you're ready to take information in until you start to do it, and then you start to get those questions. I know they went through that in the course, but now what do I do? So we definitely recommend a mentor. So we do offer mentoring for several sessions for the online attendees, or we try to link people up both face-to-face and online with people that we know that are in their areas so that they can get ongoing support. And luckily a lot of attendees already have that in place as well.
I 100% agree with finding a mentor. It is a new area of practice when you come out of the course. Your brain's full of information. You've learned how to put it into place, but you really need to hone those skills and develop those. And look, if you're working by yourself, please set yourself up with a mentor, because you might only have one driver assessment every couple of weeks or every couple of months when you first start. Especially if you're working for yourself and not in an established clinic. You want to make sure that you're getting that support over a longer period as well.
Is there any on that, I guess what I'm thinking is going back to the story of let's say the rural OT who's maybe working on their own, and then they've come and done the training, they go out on their own. Is there that could be pretty overwhelming or challenging? And as we know, like I said in the beginning, there's a general perception that cars are complicated. You go at high speeds. There's a lot of potential implications, so people can get quite scared in that environment. So, for example, OT Australia, is there any kind of associations or anything anyone can reach out to potentially to find mentorship?
Yep, there's each state has its own driving focus group, which I strongly recommend anyone in this area joins, because that's where you keep up to date with recent changes in licence authority policy, because that is often changing, and you get to hear what other people are doing. We all come across the same sorts of problems, so we can discuss them as a group, like, oh, this came up the other day, and you'll usually find that everyone's got some issues. So I would definitely join the focus groups, and yeah, I think there's some really good online OT. Brad runs a really good online OT network, which is really good to join. You can ask your questions there. So recommend that for sure.
Yeah, and then there's some other OTs as well offering some courses once you've become qualified that I can't remember the name of their company. I've got a blank, but you can search up OT driver education, I think is what it's called.
That is.
And you can search for them on Facebook, and they run some courses to help with certain topics around this area throughout the year.
Specialization.
I just got to keep an eye on the time. I just want to, there was a question that we kind of brushed over a little bit. I want to just get your opinion on it, Beth, if we possibly can. And that's the rate of pay. There's no rate of pay, from my point of view, difference, whether you're doing a driving assessment or a kitchen assessment, especially when we're talking about NDIS. Do you just want to touch base on that at all, Beth?
Yeah, I mean, it's an individual business decision or practitioner decision. You've just got to think about your business costs, your overheads, how much of a profit margin you want, and set your own prices. But I mean, I think the NDIS is always a good guide, which is coming up to nearly $200 an hour. So, but yeah, it's just the same as practice in any other area.
So driver OT doesn't get like more money per hour than another OT?
No, I mean, if you're a private business, you can set your rates how you wish, but yeah, not really.
But in terms of NDIS benefit?
No. So the advanced scope of practice, Beth, did you want to make any comments on that? I know we're not, I'm definitely not involved in that area right now. I don't know if you are or not, about the advanced scope of practice for driver trained OTs.
No, I'm sorry, I'm not.
Yeah.
No.
Just to let people know, there's some stuff going on in the background in regards to looking at driving as an advanced scope of practice, and that there may be some changes along this in that area as time goes forward.
But in general, as you said, you're not doing this as an OT. Like if you're an OT thinking about this, if you're thinking about, this is becoming a driver OTs is the way for me to go make my millions, that's obviously not that's obviously not the answer.
I don't know if any area of OT is the answer to that. I'm an actuary or something else.
No, if you're doing OT, you're doing it for the love of assisting people. And this is another, like we've said, another string to your bow. There's a lot of skills that you learn in the driving course that you can use in other areas of OT as well. But it's more about the passion of helping someone, Beth. Is that right? To me,
it also, it also seems like a natural evolution after the house, to start learning about the car.
Yeah. Yes. You mean like home modifications and so on?
Like if you're, as you said, if you're being taught early on to do kitchen assessments and things like that as an OT, it would make sense that once you're confident about that, we start going towards transport.
Yeah, it's a super interesting area. I particularly enjoy working with heavy vehicles, commercial vehicles like trucks and buses and forklifts and motorbikes. So it's not just all about cars.
Yeah.
It's a really interesting area to work in.
Yeah. Okay, cool. That's really cool.
All right. Well, time's flown. We've gone over time again, like we do every single week, Ali. We've got to keep a better eye on the time. 20 minutes as time flies. Anyway, before we wind up, we ask everybody a final question, Beth. So I'm going to ask that of you as well. But just before we do ask that final question, we want to, again, give a quick acknowledgement to our sponsors that make the show possible. A massive shout out to Mobility Engineering and again to Williams OT. As we go through each of these podcasts, we've learned so much about the enjoyment of driving, about what it can mean to somebody's life. And we know that cars are way more than just getting from A to B. Is there a memory that you can share about being in a car? Doesn't have to be about being a driver trained OT, but a memory or something that you do in your car that's special to you?
Oh, as a driver myself or with a client?
As a driver yourself, or
whatever works.
You want to relate it to work, you can.
Something funny, something different.
Oh, geez. Do you know what? When we're driving, I always get my husband to drive. I don't know. I know some of the assessments I've done is super rewarding. And so, yeah, sometimes you just feel even a bit emotional. I had a client recently who had a congenital condition, which meant she was living without any arms and with only one leg. So, and just to see her drive with, the technology is amazing. To see her drive, it was actually just like watching a child learn to walk. And it was just so, I almost felt a bit tearful, like, oh, wow, this is such an achievement for someone living with that much limitation. So yeah, it's super rewarding. That's my most memorable assessment in terms of being just like proud and happy to be involved in the process.
That's
Yeah.
that's
Awesome.
absolutely awesome. So thanks very much. If our listeners want to get any further information from you or want to get in contact, maybe about becoming a driver trained OT, what's the best place that they can do that?
Yeah, they can maybe my email is Beth, BETH at driverhealth.com.au.
And we'll put links up to your website if that's all right with you, so people can go and hunt it down.
Wonderful. Thank you.
So that's it for this show. Make sure that if you like this show, make sure you go to the show notes. If you want to get any more information, just search Drive Able Podcast. You can search for it on Facebook or Instagram, or you can check out the show notes on your favorite podcast channel. We're across a multitude of podcast channels now. So make sure you go and have a look at the show notes for the link to the Institute of Driver Health. And as we do every episode, where Ali and I are going to break down our top 3 takeaways after this short break. But at the moment, we just want to say thanks again to you, Beth.
Thank you. It was wonderful to be here. Thanks for inviting me.
Thanks very much. See ya. All right, welcome back. In this section, we bring you our expert analysis and top 3 takeaways from the interview. This is where Brad and I provide our more than 30 years of joint experience in the industry, helping people with disabilities to drive and get out in the community in a safe and meaningful way. So as always, what's our top 3 takeaways, Brad? Kick us off.
Yeah, well, so this one's not for the people with disabilities per se, but it's going to help people with disabilities, because if we can help more OTs become driver trained, then we're going to certainly help more people with disabilities get it out and about on the road. One of the things that we wanted to talk about as our number 1 is that it just fits with OT. Doing driving assessments just fits within the models and frameworks that we do. And Ali, I saw your eyes light up when we were talking about the PEO model, the person, environment, and the occupational model. You found that really interesting.
Yeah. Well, like we said, also, like, it's definitely not a pigeonholing thing. You don't just become a driver OT and just do that. You can kind of do everything, but it does very much follow, as you said, that PEO model. And for me, I think actually it's really interesting because I've been working as a mechanical engineer and also within this disability industry and OTs for probably 15 years now or more. But I've always found that I get along really well with OTs, and we tend to understand each other. And I've always said, it's like you guys are like the mechanical engineers of the people, and we're like the mechanical engineers of the cars. And there was almost like a penny drop moment when it's the PEO, because that's pretty much the same kind of philosophy that you're working on as an engineer. You're looking at all things, cause and effect. What does this cause? What does that affect? Mm-hmm. If we do this, what's that going to do? And so, yeah, it was really like a big eye-opening moment as well. And it's really cool that for me, even learning about it from an OT point of view, it makes so much sense, as you said, to just get out there and get it done, regardless of whether you're a driver OT or not, because it just fits within that model so well.
Yeah. So let us know, people, if Ali should become an OT, and we should sign him up to be an OT, where there's always need for a new OT out there, but let us know in the show notes if you think he should.
We'll see. Maybe a uni degree. I don't know if I want to do another one, but we'll see.
The other thing that we just wanted to point out is that you do need to have 2 years of experience. Most courses that are running around Australia agree with that, is that you do need to have a level of knowledge and skills and experience with dealing with diversity and also dealing with difficult assessments and providing negative feedback at some stage. So you do need to have some life experience as an OT to do this course, but don't put it in the too hard basket. Have a go. It really does match with the OT philosophies for sure.
But on that note, as we mentioned, to really highlight as part of this takeaway is that get a mentor to accelerate that experience, because
that's our number 2 takeaway. Yeah,
and I guess maybe we'll roll into that.
Let's do it.
Is that you can, well, first of all, as you said, you need to get that experience to qualify for the course. But even once you do these courses and you do everything, you look, in me personally, I'm just a believer of mentors for your whole life. So I kind of can't talk about them enough. But as we've said before, particularly in the driving environment, and even the kitchen environment, don't there's more dangerous things that's going on in a kitchen than actually in a car, much more. But people, and actually to highlight that point, a lot of people think the car's really dangerous and complicated and so on. But man, there's a lot of dangerous stuff going on in those kitchens. So the point is that you need to sort of know how to navigate these situations, and you're not going to know just by going to a course. As Beth said, it's intensive. You're going to be faced with your first client and go, what the hell am I doing here? So you really need people to bounce off.
Yeah, couldn't agree more. And one of the things that Beth made mention of was the focus group in South Australia. It's called the Driver Interest Group. In New South Wales, it's a focus group. Queensland's got one. Western Australia's got one. Northern Territory, I think, joined in with Queensland, and Victoria's definitely got one. Not really sure about Tasmania. But yeah, get involved in those for sure. There's wonderful conversations that go on in those. Quite often there's a whole bunch of problem solving. I know that when I first started, I had a really difficult client, somebody that had amputations to all 4 limbs, and I took the project there basically and asked for help, and it made a massive difference in my early stages of learning. And I can't speak highly enough of the Driver Interest Group here in South Australia, but all of them, they do offer amazing support. You need to be an OTA member, but don't let that put you off. We should all be OTA members anyway, if you're an OT. So yeah, make sure you get involved in a Driver Interest Group. They've got lots of interest groups for all kinds of areas of OT, but once you've done the course, make sure you get involved in that.
Well, it sounds like that's something you kind of really need to be part of even as a minimum, especially if you're just exclusively doing driver trained OT, as a minimum duty of care, for upskilling. So
I'm a massive advocate for the OT Association, and these interest groups are huge. So yeah.
And they get people, like I've presented at some of them as well. So, it's really good. I would highly recommend it. And I guess on that note, we've been really really pushing and selling the idea of driver OT, and I guess the reason why is to really highlight that there is that shortage,
100%. I employ people in this area, and they're like hen's teeth. They're very, very hard to find. One, as an employer, trying to find an employee is almost impossible, just because it is such a small area of OT. And you don't do it for the money. We've mentioned that. You do it for the passion of helping people. But look, it certainly is rewarding. And Beth gave the example of her person with one working limb, and being able to provide freedom and opportunity for that person to get out and about. It certainly is. You do it for the reward at the end of it.
I'd add a little bit, and I'm interested to hear your feedback on this, Brad. I guess from my observations, and we mentioned before in this podcast, that with the NDIS and so on, the number of OTs coming out of uni is just unprecedented, and there's so many of them. Mm-hmm. And I guess if you become a driver OT, then you stand out, and I'm guessing, Brad, you've probably never had trouble earning money. Because you're a driver OT, you've probably never had trouble getting a job. Is that right?
One of the hardest things that we have to deal with every day is, and Beth mentioned it as well, is the wait lists.
Yeah, that's right. So
that's the biggest complaints that we get, is how come I can't be seen? There is a shortage of driver trained OTs. NDIS have put us in the spotlight in regards to vehicle modifications and driving assessments, to make sure that people are sound drivers with such modifications before they prescribe things like behind you in your picture there, the turnout seats and so forth, especially if it's for a driver. yeah, they put the spotlight on OT, and they've certainly put the spotlight on driver trained OTs when it comes to vehicle modifications and driving with such aids and so forth. So yeah, look, it's a great area to get into. It's very rewarding. You can hear the passion in Beth's voice when she talks about it. It's the OT field to get into. A little bit biased.
Sounds good.
A little bit biased.
Yeah.
All right. So that winds up our top 3 takeaways. It really does fit with OT. Make sure that you get a mentor. And look, there is a shortage and a bit of a plug to get people involved in the course. As we wind up this episode, we want to give a shout out to the sponsors, Mobility Engineering and Williams OT. Williams OT Driver Assessments and Rehab is all the pieces of the puzzle to assist people with disabilities reach their driving and community mobility goals. And Mobility Engineering is a team of passionate and dedicated people focused on bringing Australia's largest range of suitable transport options for all walks of life. And as we say in every episode, this advice that we've provided today in the podcast is general in nature. So if you've got any queries about what's right for you, make sure we normally say it for people with disabilities, make sure you set yourself up with a trial with a mobility dealer or OT. But in this episode, make sure you go and check out the universities, but the Institute of Driver Health to get more information about the driving course. That's it for today.
That's it, Brad. Thanks very much.
All right, mate. See you in the next one. Have a good week, everyone.
See ya.
Thanks for listening to the Drive Able podcast with Brad Williams and Ali Akbarian. If you like what you've heard, make sure you like, rate, and subscribe. It really does make a massive difference. If you or anyone you know would like to share a story about driving with a disability, or you would like to get in contact, find the show notes, or find the resources mentioned in this episode, you can find us on Facebook. Just search @Drive Able Podcast for more information.